Everybody, welcome. It is 7 p.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know I have a few more people joining, but we'll get them in. So welcome to the Virginia DC First LEGO League webinar series. Tonight we're going to take some time to talk about how to take your project to the next level with the Global Innovation Award. We will also give coaches some tips and tricks for dealing with the project during COVID-19 because that does present a new challenge that we haven't had before. So on our call tonight, I'll do introductions and just a couple housekeeping points. We'll talk about what the innovation project is because I do know I have some new coaches on the call. We'll give tips for managing the project during COVID-19. We're also going to hear from, which I'm really excited about, an award-winning team from the area. And then we'll move into the Global Innovation Award. We'll talk about what it is, how you can apply, and we'll actually hear from a team that was nominated this year. So I am Caitlin Olnitsky. I am the Assistant Director of Virginia DC First LEGO League. Later on the call tonight will be Christian Jones. She'll be helping me moderate some of the questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the panel. And then tonight, I have Absolute Zero here tonight, which I'm really excited about. So I have Lizzie Fulcher, who is one of the coach mentors. I have Liz Lynch, who's also a coach mentor. Emily Harrell, also a coach mentor. And then we have four fantastic team members from Absolute Zero: William Morrison, Tyler Carr, Nady Patel, and Carly Shively. And they'll be talking about their project and their experience with Global Innovation Award. And tonight is really about being able to talk with these coaches and these students. So please feel free to engage both of us and then also myself who delivers the program. So a couple of housekeeping points really quick. This session is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or if your internet's being glitchy, we'll be able to help you out. If you're calling on a phone and you can't see the slides, we'll also be sending out the slides later on, so you'll be able to access all of the links. As you go through, if you have any questions or comments, please put those in the Q&A box. We will be taking small breaks throughout the session. Questions can be directed towards myself, towards the coach mentors, or towards the team members. If you can try to please address the comments to all panelists, that makes sure we all see them. But if not, I should be able to access them. And to respect everyone's time, we hope to be able to answer all questions, but if we can't, we will try our best to follow up later on with answers, and all this will be coming on. So I see lots of people joining us, and I'm really excited to get started and talk with Absolute Zero. So let's get into it. So Absolute Zero is a team from Martinsville, Virginia. They're a middle school team, which I think is awesome being a former middle school teacher. And they are a school-based team, which I think is important to know, that they run their practices after school. I mean, they have those resources that a school would. So they, at our state championship, or our championship last year, took home one of our Innovative Solution Awards, and that got them nominated from Virginia DC for the Global Innovation Award. And with that, we nominate teams from all across the world, and there's only 20 semifinalists. And Absolute Zero was one of the 20 semifinalists globally. So their project really is something to take note of because they've really taken some time to fine tune it, and it got the acknowledgement and the recognition that it absolutely deserved. So tonight I am going to be talking about a lot of different resources, especially during COVID-19, that you can find. If you haven't been with us much over the summer, we did redo our entire website and we added a lot of resources that are really going to help coaches. So many of the resources I talk about tonight, I'll be sending out later on, but if you want to get access to them tonight, you can find them on our website, VA+DC on our innovation project. And also, once you register your team, FIRST has made all of the program, the season assets, available through your dashboard. So you won't see this little access ThinkScape button until you pay and register. But once you do that, you'll have access to the interactive digital engineering notebooks. You'll have access to tons of different resources for the team. So make sure that you're able to check those out. And if you can't find them, please reach out to us and we'll get those to you. So for those of you just starting this season, I'm really excited about the project this year, especially during COVID-19, while a lot of us are trapped in our houses or in our in front of our computers. This is about play, and this is about getting people active. So In a typical year in the innovation project, your team will identify a problem, they'll design a solution, they'll share their ideas, and they'll pitch their solution at an event. So this year we're looking at identifying a problem that's specific to people not being active enough. So there are a lot of cool resources that we'll talk about, but one of them is this challenge guide. And one thing that Absolute Zero is going to tell you is you got to know your challenge. So take some time to understand what it's asking you. With this one, it's thinking about how we can motivate people to be active, how we can get people to be more rewarded when they're active. Why aren't people being active? So really taking a moment to look through some of these documents with your team is really going to help out. So before I start talking about the process, I'm only going to go over just a few slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to our team because that's who we want to hear. So please, as we go through, please put those questions in the Q&A. They can be for myself, they can be for coaches, or they can even be for the team members. We're all here to give our advice and share our knowledge with you. So teams always start by identifying the clearly defined problem that's well-researched. So like I said before, you have got to know your challenge. Make sure that the kids understand what's being asked of them in terms of coming up with a problem and then coming up with a solution. There's a couple of really great ways you can get inspired, and I know Absolute Zero is going to talk about what got their project inspired, but a few places to look at would be in the engineering notebook, there's 4 project sparks. And what those are trying to do is to get the kids thinking about ways in their places in their community that the project might apply. Another great thing you can do is look at the actual mission models. This year, they're talking about rowing and different physical activities. So who can't do those activities, or why aren't people doing those activities? The Legos themselves can actually inspire you. Look in your community. One of the things I think is great about the team we're about to hear from, their problem is very specific to their community. And that's, I think, what made them all buy in and come up with this great idea. Also, there's going to be a bunch of inspirational resources in Thinkscape. There's already pictures and videos and articles there for you. And then once your team has picked a topic, you maybe want to at first identify 2 or 3. Some teams, everybody researches those topics and they decide together. Other options, they actually split the topics up, do their own little research report back, and then they vote. So we'll hear more about what Absolute Zero does, but there's just a few ways that you can handle identifying the problem, because that's where you have to get started. Online research, there are some tips and tricks. First of all, use those best practices. Librarians want to talk to you. They might even gather resources for you. If you tell them what you're looking for, that's what librarians like to do. So whether you're a school team and you have a librarian, or you're a community team and you need to reach out to your community librarian, if you don't know how to get your team researching, the research is so important. So reach out to a librarian. Try to see if you can find guest speakers or trips. During COVID-19, I know that this can be difficult, and we'll talk about it on the next slide. But as you'll see with Absolute Zero, start with who you know. Start with people in your community that are going to be invested in your project rather than just cold calling somebody off a website. Maybe there's somebody in your local government, or maybe there's an organization or a business, or maybe you have an uncle or a grandma or somebody that knows someone who can get you that connection. Another way to do research is to do surveys. Ask targeted questions, explain the purpose. The more, ask a wide audience, the more data you can get, the better. Some helpful platforms might be Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, but that's another way that you can get data, especially during COVID-19. Surveys are a very COVID-19 friendly way to do some research. On our website, we do have a list of virtual field trips. A lot of these are kind of geared towards the replay season. In addition, I want to talk about some experts. I know right now it can be tough to get a hold of experts. There are a couple of websites if you don't have somebody that might be able to help. Nepris is a website that's only dedicated to connecting the classroom with professionals in the field. So you can create an account with them, request some professionals, and they've already done the vetting of those professionals for you. And so they can get you connected with somebody in their team. And this company actually started in Stanton, Virginia. So it's kind of a cool little thing as well. Skype actually has a Skype and expert platform. So if you're having a hard time finding an expert, Skype with an expert. They've already got some set up for you. And the last source I want to talk about is the First Mentor Network. This is brand new this year. You can actually just Google it right now. And what you do is a team goes on and create a profile, and professionals create profiles. And then it's almost like a matching service where you can find experts that are already vetted by FIRST that are interested with working with teams from FIRST, which is kind of hard sometimes. They know what FIRST LEGO League is. They want to talk to you. So that could be another great way to get experts as you're going through the process. So when you design your project, I love Absolute Zero is going to talk about this in a minute, but you got to make sure that everyone's a part of the process. That's actually specifically stated on the rubric this year. There aren't many places where they say everybody has to be involved, but everybody is going to be involved with this. Go back to your research and maybe do more research. That can always help. And then look at maybe why other ideas haven't worked. Maybe your team found an idea and they think it's great, and then they realize it already exists. So go back and figure out why this hasn't solved the problem yet, what could be improved, and then document your process because, again, that's specifically on the rubric. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So creating. You're going to see a really, really cool prototype from Absolute Zero in just a minute. On the rubric, it does say that you need to create some type of prototype model or drawing to represent your solution. So a physical model can be whatever your team has available. It could be actual materials, cardboard, recycling materials, 3D printed. They could be things you have at home, Raspberry Pis, hummingbirds, anything. And when I say hummingbirds, those are all robotics kits. Get creative. Now, in COVID-19, the physical model might be kind of tough. So you can also do drawings on a computer. You can do hand drawings. And on our website, we actually included a couple of CAD platforms that teams can use because maybe you can't get together to make an actual model this year. So prototype drawings are absolutely going to work for judging. So try some of those out as well. That might be helpful. And you never know, you might get a kid in there that loves CAD design and they just take over it. And you have no clue how they created what they created, but they did it because kids are awesome and they do that kind of thing. So I only have 2 more slides and then I'm going to turn it over to Absolute Zero. But these next couple slides are really about how to take your project to the next level. It's one thing to identify a problem. It's one thing to come up with a cool idea, but does it actually work? Can you iterate it? Can you share your feedback? Can you collect feedback? Can you improve your solution? So teams can share with experts. This might be a good place where if you talk to an expert at the beginning of the season, you might want to ask them if you can circle back around and share your solution with them and get that feedback and improve it. You could also talk to other community stakeholders. Who is going to need what you design? Who in your community would be using it? That's who you really want to ask, like, would this work for you? Would this work? There was a team last year who designed playground equipment for autistic children. One of their stakeholders were those children. They had to make sure that it was actually going to work for them. Don't be scared of the feedback. I know sometimes as students and as coaches, when we get bad feedback, we're like, oh man, our whole design is just over and it's just done. Those setbacks can make your project stronger. And so look for ways that you can measure your effectiveness. That's one thing that Absolute Zero is going to talk about. How did they know that their project was actually going to work? So look for different ways that you can measure it through graphs, through charts, through data that you could actually go and show judges. And then at the end, which is where we're going to get to Absolute Zero, you'll communicate that. So you'll communicate a presentation and you'll have all this research and you'll have all these ideas and you're going to have to boil it down into 5 minutes worth of a presentation. So we'll be doing a remote judging webinar on November 10th. We're still trying to figure out how this is going to work with COVID-19, but by November 10th, we'll have a better idea of what remote judging is going to look like. So I know a couple people had asked for resources on that, so just stay tuned. So before we get into global innovation, I want to talk with Absolute Zero. So we're going to go ahead and first show this really great little clip that they've created about their project, and then we're going to hear about their process. And this is a great time, coaches and people on the call, please go ahead as you're hearing from these students, throw in your questions. They could be for the coaches or for the students. So let's go ahead and check out this video from Absolute Zero.
We are Absolute Zero from Martinsville, Virginia, and we are excited about our new innovation, the wood ski. Did you know in a energy, and life. So we created the will-to-ski, a skill-like adaptation that can easily attach to any...
I'm sorry, I think when I muted myself, I muted the video. So I'm going to go ahead and just start it over really quick. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, from Martinsville, Virginia, and we are excited about our new innovation, the will-to-ski. Did you know in an emergency seconds count, just a few minutes can be the difference between life and death? In our research, 64% of people do not shovel their entryways until 24 hours after it snows. The will-to-ski helps first responders maneuver through snow, saving time, energy, and life. So we created the will-to-ski, a skill-like adaptation that can easily attach to any standard stretcher with a drop, lock, and slide.
Awesome. So before I turn it over to Absolute Zero, I did want to just clarify, this was their project from last year. So if you weren't a part of the City Shaper season, they were asked to identify a problem within their community. So over the next few slides, we're going to hear from the team. And now I see some questions coming in. So we'll go ahead and then start with those questions after that. So go ahead, Absolute Zero, take it over.
Okay, so our problem is that first responders in areas like Martinsville, Virginia, utilize stretchers that cannot maneuver through snow, resulting in a loss of time, power, and lives. Our why. Around this time last year, our coach's friend Ronnie Wagner had a stroke. Due to other medical emergencies, it took EMS workers too long to reach him, causing a loss of oxygen to the brain, resulting in the loss of his life. This motivated us to look into other scenarios where time is the difference between life and death, which led us to the invention of the will-to-ski.
Statistics from the American Heart Association show that the door-to-needle response time is 60 minutes. Opioid overdoses also require a quick response time from medical personnel. We also learned that EMS workers cannot perform defibrillation on ice and snow, but the will-to-ski solves this problem. After surveying over 500 people, we found that 64% of people do not shovel their entryway before 24 hours after snowfall.
Next slide. During our solution development, we realized that 4 skis did not have enough surface area to hold the weight of the stretcher and a patient, so we realized that we had to use 2 snowboards. During it, we also had to design wheel chocks using CAD, a 3D printing software. We also had to design a rudimentary clamping system, which we hope to improve on. And we also made a braking system to stop the stretcher from moving.
Some current solutions are a rescue basket, which first responders have to carry, a backpack stretcher, which uses a lot of manpower, and a snowmobile, but for areas like Martinsville, Virginia, it doesn't make physical sense for us to purchase these because we don't get enough snow.
So we went to Massanutten Ski Resort in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and we tried pushing the traditional stretcher at different distances, and you can see the time. We tried it with the will-to-ski, and you can see that the time was greatly decreased. And then our next steps are creating an LLC, which is a business protection program, starting small-scale production, and working with our marketing mentor.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your process. And as many of the coaches probably saw, that project evolved as they went through it. So one question that we've come up, and this is not for the team yet, but I just want to put this out there. I know some people, newer coaches, are asking when we're planning on having our competitions this year. We have pushed it back. Last year, Absolute Zero was getting ready to go to a tournament in November, but we are actually going to be pushing our competition season back to the end of January into February. We do also hope to have some other events afterwards into the spring when we can be outside more. But in terms of the competition season, you still have a lot of time to go. By extending it, it gives teams more time to plan. So turning it over to Absolute Zero and the coaches, this is a free-for-all. Any of you guys want to take this question? How did you guys pick your topic? How did you guys decide? Were there other ideas out there? How did you guys come up with this idea?
We kind of listened to each other's ideas and put them all together and realized that time matters in a rescue.
Awesome. And I think that really, I think you guys commenting on the fact that you listen to each other. Sometimes it can be hard to get your students to do that, but I think that when you built in those core values and you have that gracious professionalism, you can be a team like this that is able to see the urgency behind some of it. How long have you guys been a team?
3 years.
So in other years, have you guys ever run into a situation where you just couldn't pick a topic? It's looking like kind of no. You guys just like always get along on everything. I don't know. Coaches, do you have any insight to that? Because you've seen the game.
Well, it's funny because we go through, we'll make lists and lists and lists and lists of possible topic ideas or solutions to the problem. And actually, this past season, we didn't start in this direction at all. We started going with another project, and we went, we toured some facilities. We did a lot with that. And then we just realized, maybe it wasn't as necessary as what we had thought. And then, of course, my friend got sick and passed away, and that kind of sparked a new interest in finding something else. And Nighty, you can tell them about how, who we talked to if you want to.
We participated in the Big Idea competition. So we got to talk to a lot of people about creating this and then learning with the marketing plan and stuff. It was really fun.
And just to recap that, the Big Idea is a local innovation competition that our community college gives every year. And actually, it's an adult competition, but they gave us permission to participate. And so we did, and we ended up winning that competition. But, choosing the idea, back to that, choosing the idea is hard, especially, really trying to figure out what's the most important or how you can go from there. So that's really where we stick with our why. Like, why are we making this project? Why do we want to solve this project? And the more personal connections that you can make to it really helps motivate the team.
A question for the students. Do you think that having a personal connection to the project helped you want to research? Sometimes research is not our favorite thing in the world, but do you think that personal connection motivated you guys at all?
Yes, it definitely motivated me because we wanted to find a way to help people in those times, where EMS workers can't get to you in time when there is snow. So it was a really fun topic to research, in my opinion.
Awesome. Another question that we have for the team is, how much research is enough? How do you know that you have enough research, or do you ever know? How did you guys decide, okay, I think we have it? What's enough?
Well,
you can go.
Sorry. Okay. Well, there's never enough research. We continue to research throughout the whole season. We conducted extensive amounts of research. We made a survey, and we consulted over 500 people. And we talked to many experts like Todd Owens at Martinsville Fire and EMS.
Awesome. So it kind of got to a point where you were like, well, we have to go to the competition, so this is what we have. And then you built on it more for the championship event. And then I assume even more once you met with all those experts at Global Innovation. So we saw that. We do have a team. I guess I could have started with this too, but you guys are a really large team. How many team members did you have last year?
10.
Okay.
Did I hear somebody say you had 10 members?
Yes.
So you had the max. And what grade? That's a question that's come up. What grade are some of you guys?
I was in 8th grade last year, and now I'm in 9th.
I was in
Most
eighth.
of our participants were 7th and 8th grade. Yeah, everybody was 7th and 8th grade.
And one thing I will say for the people listening is I know that we run elementary and middle school. The research project is one of the reasons why we do run 2 divisions. We have a Division 1 that's geared more towards our elementary students and a Division 2. Now, in global innovation, once you get past Virginia and DC, it's a free-for-all. But we know that research skills between 3rd graders and 8th graders are very different. So if you're listening to these very articulate 7th and 8th and 9th graders and you're like, oh my gosh, my team is not like that, it's okay, because that is one of the reasons why we want to assess all our teams based on, on their skill set. And so this is a middle school team, but I can tell you right now there are elementary school teams who, while their ability levels might not be in the high school level, and some of them are, they absolutely put forth a stellar project. And so please don't feel like, oh, well, my team members aren't as old as these team members. Your team can still have a great project. And a lot of these tips that this team is giving are applicable to all age levels. Before I move on, I wanted to ask the team one more question. I've got some other questions for later. Your idea, how do you know if an idea is innovative? What if it already exists? Like you said, there were some other ideas out there. How did you guys kind of settle on this one?
Well, you really don't know if there's another solution out there. But the more research you do and the more time you spend looking into it, if you haven't found something eventually, you're most likely one of the first to come up with it.
And that's a great point. You guys keep bringing up the idea of research. How, as a big team of 10, how did you guys split the work? Because there are parts that everybody has to do, but you don't need everybody working on everything. How did you guys split the work? Because you do have a very large team.
When at the beginning of the season in August, we kind of separated by our strengths at first. So there's 4 kids on robot, 4 kids on project, and 2 on core values. So at the beginning, those 4 kids on project just kept looking stuff up and trying to figure out the solution.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Lizzie. So, William, you bring up a really good point, that it's great to play into people's strengths, and you will have some people that gravitate more towards one part or the other. But I think one thing that makes your team really strong is that when it came down to those big decisions, you guys got back together as a team, while people were working on different things. So at this point, we've got some questions for later, but I want to get into a little bit more into global innovation. And we've had some great questions come from the audience, so please keep throwing them out there, and we will keep answering them. So moving on to global innovation. So the Global Innovation Award is a special celebration that highlights just the project. One thing I love about FIRST is more than robots. It's not just about who has the best mathematical or engineering skills. It's also about the research and the presenting. And one thing I love about Absolute Zero is the empathy behind what you're designing, right? Our best designs in life come from when they have a personal meaning to them. And so the Global Innovation Award showcases innovative solutions from around the world. So this was a global thing that Absolute Zero got to participate in. The region, so Virginia, DC, gets to nominate teams. Last year, we got to nominate 3 teams. And this year, it's still up in the air, but we will absolutely receive nominations. And from that very large list, it's narrowed down to 20 semifinalists from around the globe. And we had 2 teams from Virginia, DC, the ruling Robot Falcons and Absolute Zero, who placed in that top 20. And if we had not had to deal with COVID, Absolute Zero would have been going to Orlando to Disney World. I know they're smiling right now. They made the best of it. But those 20 teams get to participate in a wider event. And the winning team receives $20,000 to put towards their project. But as you can see with Absolute Zero, even if you don't win, these teams are still living, they're still bringing out their ideas into real life, as you heard the team talk about making their LLC. So the rubric for this is very similar to the project rubric, but it really focuses on the second half of the process, making sure that your design is innovative, making sure you've really developed a solution, making sure that you're clearly going to implement it. As you can see, that's one of the things on the rubric was they had motivation to implement it. That's why Absolute Zero talked about the LLC, about things like that, because they were actually working on implementing it in real life. You don't have to have a patent or anything like that going into it. It's not required, but just showing that you have a real desire to make this happen, that you've really talked about price points, that you've really talked with professionals. Like, as they said, they've spoken or surveyed over 500 people. I mean, they have a lot of data with that. So moving on to the team, there were a couple of questions I really wanted to narrow in on with the team, especially with Global Innovation Award. So Absolute Zero, how did your team take your project to the next level?
Well, really the big idea contest kind of put us in motion for like future events, because getting that gave us confidence of our project.
The prize for that was also a mentorship. So we had a lot access to the Fab Lab, which had 3D printers and technicians who were good with it, who were willing to work with our kids. That was the prize of the big idea. When we won it, we got a year membership to it.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know you guys have talked about the why, and this is on this slide, and I just really want to drive that home to coaches. Sometimes it can feel like you're wrangling squirrels, after kids have had a long day at school. They want to be on their phones, they want to have their snack, they want to do their own thing. But really getting your team to invest in the why, it's very clear that these guys were invested in their work, that this was not something that came out of the coaches. This was from them. And a lot of it came down, I love that, to their why. Why are they doing this? And I loved, as Lizzie mentioned before, they had looked at all these other ideas, and that why is what really got them to decide on an idea that took them to the next level. So another question for you, Absolute Zero. Let me advance your slide. How did you make sure it was innovative? We talked a little bit about that, but I know being a coach, that's something that my team was like, well, we'll just, do something else, like put some duct tape on it or whatever. How did you guys really find that innovative solution?
We did a lot of research about it. Like, we researched it, then we went to Martinsville Fire and EMS to see what solutions they currently use. So, and then we also made sure like each team member was educated on it, so then they could research it more. So
that brings up a question to me. Did anybody just not respond? Was there anybody you reached out to that just didn't respond back to you? Or do you feel like you got a pretty good feedback from the community?
I feel we had pretty good feedback from the community and everybody we asked.
And again, I think a strength for something you guys did with that was that it seemed like by touching base with Martinsville Fire and EMS, you guys kept it all very local. You kept it looking at people who were really going to be invested in what you guys were doing and really wanted to see the team be successful. And so I think that that's a tip that we can definitely give to coaches is start with the people in your community, start with people you know. They're a lot more likely to answer those emails, especially as we're all on emails and Zoom calls all day. When they see those names from schools and from organizations they know, it makes them look at that email a little bit more closely and set up that meeting with you.
Absolutely. I was just going to say making those connections with the community members is absolutely key, in my opinion, because they are totally there to support you. Martinsville Fire and EMS and Henry County Public Safety were incredible to support us. They shared our experiences. They were supportive with all that we were going through, with all the competitions through the Big Idea, through FLL. They let us borrow equipment. They gave advice. They wanted to help, and they loved to see that, young people in their community were doing great things. So definitely use your community as a resource.
And question, did the students actually reach out directly to some of these people, or was it only coaches?
Nighty?
Well, we did have some personal connections through Lieutenant Todd Owens. So he helped us, we talked to him, and then he helped us get in touch with Martinsville Fire and EMS. So then they started helping us, like giving us, like what they use, what they don't use, stuff like that.
And I know you guys had legit equipment because I remember seeing you at the championship last year and having a heart attack because I thought somebody was killed because there was this very professional full-size stretcher in the hallway. And that's when I got to meet you guys. So having those connections does help. But coaches on the call, just know that if you do have younger students in elementary school, you're absolutely able to make those connections. And maybe even having the students write the email but sent from your email account. I know that when professionals hear from the students and not just, can you come talk to my class, as more of a, I am a 4th grade student and I'd really like to talk to you about this, that could be really helpful as well. So for some of my coaches of younger teams, you can absolutely reach out. But also, we all need to learn how to write emails this day and age. So it's good for some of these students to learn some of those skills.
Well, even with our when these guys were younger, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we practice with a script. We'll give them a script to read from when they call professionals to ask for, interviews or to come visit or to borrow something or whatever it is it may be. Even these guys, they'll come up with a script of what they need to say, and and they're very professional. I think that is one of the biggest things this year that they have learned is, requesting sponsorships. They did every bit of it. We handled the funding of it, the money once they got it and put it into our school account, but they went out we drove them around town and they went out to, talk to the community and, ask for help or support, if nothing else. So your little kids, even though they're smaller, helping them with the script, I think it means a lot more coming from the kids. Of course, you've got to make those initial connections sometimes, but it's definitely a rewarding piece.
I'm so happy you added that, Lizzie. Absolute Zero team members, what was it like having your coaches not make you, but just ask you to go out in the community? What was that experience like for you guys?
I think it was pretty fun because we all got to meet members of our community who own businesses and helped out in ways we didn't even know.
Were any of you guys nervous to do that? Sometimes people are nervous even to make a doctor's appointment. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move on. Again, that was really great feedback, Lizzie. I think that's important for the coaches to hear. Sometimes I think we don't think our students can do as much as they can. When you give them the right tools, they can do it. And like William said, actually have a little bit of fun doing it and get to meet people. And maybe there's a couple stores now you can stop by and say hey, remember me? So yeah, that's awesome. So how did you guys test and develop the solution? What was your testing process like? Because this is really what's going to take your project to the next level. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
We remember that there was always room for improvement. So even if we had something that we thought was good, we would try to take it to the next level.
Would you guys mind being able to talk through some of your points on the screen? Because I think that you guys tapped into some things that people might not even be thinking of. And so if one of you guys wanted to talk about that, I love how you said always room for improvement, but.
Well, when we were at the Patrick Henry Big Art Fab Lab, which is the 3D printing studio, we used the 3D print pens to start the small models and a WWE toy stretcher. We just put them under it. And then we used CAD, which is the 3D printing software, to make a bigger wheel chock and used a real snowboard to attach it to the real stretcher.
Awesome. And that's so great that you guys had a lot of these resources. During COVID-19, one thing I do want to make sure coaches know, within the rubric, you don't have to have a physical model. By having that CAD design, and again, you can put a lot of details in it, you can look at the measurements. The physical model does help, and I really do think that is a part of what took Absolute Zero to the next level, because it was a little bit harder to test if they had only tested it virtually. But just knowing COVID-19 that drawings and computer-aided designs are absolutely acceptable, especially if your team, a lot of teams are meeting virtually and they can't get together in person and they can't necessarily go to the Fab Lab and they maybe not be able to get access to all of those things. So there are other options. And like I mentioned, we have put a lot of CAD resources out on our website too. So my last question this way about your project, then I want to turn it over to Global Innovation, but what kind of factors did your team have to consider when you were implementing this for the real world? You know, it's one thing to talk about an idea and say like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool? But what things did you actually have to think about to maybe get this LLC off the ground or to really bring this into real life?
We consulted with many professionals who would actually be using this product, like Lieutenant Todd Owens at the Martinsville City Fire and EMS, and a lot of the people that worked with him. One of the big things that we had to really put into, it was like one of our problems with our initial design was we wanted to use 4 skis on one for each wheel, but that was a problem because of like surface area. So we used two skis instead of 4 so that it would accommodate for the weight. We also shared our solution with professionals, and we looked out for EMS conferences that would potentially sell our product, and we found one in Virginia Beach that we were looking to attend.
That is fantastic. I'm so happy that you brought that up too, that you extended it beyond who's actually going to be selling this product, who's actually going to be looking at looking for this product. And I just also love the fact that your team didn't get set back by when you had that problem with surface area, that's really what took this project to the next level. And I know when I've been a coach before, sometimes my students, when they have a problem, when they face that wall, they're like, well, now we just have to go back to the beginning and start over, instead of thinking about, okay, no, what's wrong? And then how can we fix it? So I'm really happy that you touched on that too, because it's really easy to kind of fall back and just say, well, it is what it is. So want to talk a little bit about Global Innovation Awards. It would have been so awesome if you guys would have gone to Disney World. I was even trying to get there too as a judge. But I hope that I know that you guys still got a lot out of it. Talking with the students first and then maybe the coaches, what were some of the highlights of the week for you? And before I even say that, people in the audience know that these students got to meet with experts. They got to talk with a lot of teams, but I'll let them talk about it. What was that experience like for you? What were some things that stood out to you?
I really like talking with some of the engineers in Disney because they're kind of like big deals.
I like how every team, not just ours, had to adapt to the virtual because really nobody had to use it before. So everybody was learning it and have to give a presentation of such a high standard. It was.
Student takeaways, and then I'd love to hear from the coaches what you thought of it as well.
Okay. So I think, the world stopped spinning back in March, and that kind of put us in a real bind. And we were kind of panicking. And then, once we learned of the nomination officially, and then we learned that it was going to be virtual, we had to really rethink our tactics to how we were going to present our just our presentation, how we were going to show. The hardest thing that we had with it was to showing our passion, and that was really important. And, to be able to make that come through in a virtual setting. So we tried to work on figuring out how could we relay that message to people, because we are incredibly passionate about our project, but we wanted everybody to know that, so virtual was a little bit hard to do that. One of the biggest things that I loved about Global Innovations virtually was I think it was the virtual pit area where people could comment on your social media page, whichever one it was. They could comment on your product or your maybe one of the activities you were engaged in or whatever. But it was a really uplifting way to handle virtual competition. It was really disheartening not to be there in person with everybody, but it really was uplifting to read those comments when you would get comments from people, engineers at John Deere, or Imagineers at Disney, all of the people who came through your pages. That was really a powerful piece, in my opinion.
I really loved that we got to see other teams. They had an Excel sheet, and you could sign up for times. And so often during FLL, we never see anybody else's project. So we got to see their entire demo, and we got to talk to them and ask questions. And I think it really pushed our team for future endeavors, and it was just a really cool experience.
That was kind of my next question, Liz. And for everybody, the picture you see on the screen is of the winning team from Spain. But I'm wondering, were there some teams, because I really want to give people listening a scope of how big this was. What were some countries of teams that you guys were talking to? What really, like, oh my gosh, we're talking with a team from this place? What really stood out to you guys?
There were teams from Brazil, Spain, Israel, all over the United States. I can't think anybody else remember the rest of them. But
pretty sure one was from Poland or Portland.
Poland, I believe you're right. Yes, Poland. Portland's a little different, but Poland, yeah. But it was really interesting to talk to those teams. Carly, can you share some experiences with talking to the teams?
Well, it was very interesting talking to all the teams and seeing all of their different projects and seeing how they do all of their research and their design processes. It was very interesting, and it gave us a lot of ideas for ways we can go about doing things for next season. And it was very, very nice to meet them and talk to them and talk about their experiences with FLL.
And I also love that teams from around the world got to see our teams from Martinsville and Newport News, and that you guys put us on the map in that way as well. I mean, out of 20 teams total, to have 2 of them be from Virginia is just so cool. And so I'm really happy you guys got to have that experience. They have not put out details for Global Innovation this year. I have a feeling with the way everything's working that it will also be virtual, and hopefully it'll even be a next step up from next year. But even that virtual experience, it's so good to hear how much you guys got out of that. So my last question for you, are there any other tips for teams about their project or anything that you got from Global Innovation that is something that you really think might be able to help them out? And this could be from the team members or the coaches.
I would say work hard and always stay on topic. Don't really veer too far off.
I would say just make sure you take everybody's idea into account. Just don't exclude anybody. So like maybe if one person's idea doesn't work, you can use the other person's idea, or like you can combine the ideas together so it will work. That's what I would say is the most important thing.
So one note I got for the team, a comment, awesome, great design. Did you consider filing a patent for the design? Nice of you for following through with an LLC. Have you guys thought about a patent at all?
We're currently,
Yes.
go ahead, Tyler.
Okay. So we had talked to a lawyer and see what it would take to get a patent, and we would need someone to invest in it because it would be pretty expensive. But we've been talking to people to see if they would want to invest in it.
And this is a great point to bring out that we do partner with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. We actually run a tournament there as well. It'll be a little bit different this year, but we do have really great connections there. And on our Global Innovation website page, we're still in the process of updating it, but we have put a link to patent resources out there for people looking, but it's not something that's necessary. But if you're really trying to go for global innovation, it's just one way to show that you're really willing to implement your idea. But it was just knowing as a judge, it was something that's very much brought out to us that we would never judge, we would never downgrade a team because they didn't do it. But it is a great way to think about your ideas in the future. And I also just feel like it's such a boss grown up move, filing a patent, like that's just a boss move. And that's really what we want for our students, is to be those leaders and innovators of the future. So before I start to wrap things up about how to get nominated, I heard from some teams, but coaches, did you have any tips for teams moving into this season with the project?
I'll just say you heard Absolute Zero tell you that this is their third year together. Most of them's third year together. They didn't start out like this. They've been to state a couple of times. They've won project at state. And this year, early on, we set the goal as a team, or they set the goal. We gave them the information about global innovation and kind of said, would you like to do this? And of course, the answer was yes. So from the beginning of this season, our push was for global innovation. So we looked at rubrics, and I would just recommend to use your rubric. Use it as a tool to help you. Like, don't do your whole project and then look at the rubric and be like, oh no, we didn't answer this well or this well. But use it as a guide as you go along, and it'll save yourself time in the long run. Something I think would be a good tip for teams is just to, remember there's room for improvement, like we mentioned before. You're going to come up with ideas and you're going to hit walls, like Caitlin mentioned. And the biggest thing is not to let that overcome you. The more research that you put in, and putting in research is time consuming, but it's absolutely necessary. And surveying people and contacting people, the more people that you talk to find out if your problem is really a possibility, your solution is really a possibility to solve a problem. I think that is, just diving into that level, I think is really important. And we really made it a point this year to try to be as professional in our appearance as we could be, just because we thought that was important for, as our kids are getting older and they're learning how to present. When they had to present, they wore collared shirts. They tried to kind of embrace the real world while doing their project. So that was something that we set as a goal, but it paid off, I think, because they learned a lot of life skills throughout this year.
I think those are all great tips, and I'll piggyback on what Emily said. On our innovation project page on our website under the FLL challenge section, we do have the rubric posted. I think that's a great idea. It's almost like your checklist. It will really guide your work, and it will help teams make sure that they're not spending time in a certain area and forgetting about others. And honestly, it just makes me so happy to hear that you guys set out this goal and you saw it through. And I just think that's amazing. And I really hope that coaches on the call or listening later will remember that First LEGO League is more than just robots. The robot game is a really exciting and fun part of it. But there's this whole other great part that sometimes we push off. I know as a coach, a lot of times, like we spent so much time on the robot game that we were like, oh no, our project for competition, and we threw it together the last second. While COVID-19 presents a lot of challenges for us, this could be a year where teams really start with the project while they're trying to figure out how they're going to make robot game happen during COVID-19. As I mentioned before, a lot of the pieces of the project, all the pieces of the project can be done virtually. And on our COVID-19 updates page on the website, we also give links to everything I talked about in terms of CAD software, virtual meeting tips, reaching out to experts, finding virtual field trips. So if we don't have something you're looking for, please let us know and we'll do that. So with that all being said, this year to celebrate the project and to adjust to the new rubrics that have come out, we are opening up the Global Innovation Award process to all registered teams in Virginia. So in the past, 2 of our nominations, you had to make it to champion first, and then we made the decision from there. But we based it in the past on the innovative solution part of the rubric, but with the rubrics adjusting, there is no innovative solution part. It's built into other places. So basically, I don't want to give any more work to teams. I want them to really focus on this. What teams will do, and we won't open this up until November, but we wanted to get people thinking about it now. Basically, in order for Absolute Zero to compete in global innovation, the coaches had to submit a quick write-up. It was a few questions. So we're basically going to ask for that same write-up. So if you get the nomination, you don't have to do any extra work. It's based on the rubric, and I'll bring that back up here, right here. So teams will just have to report on what their problem was, what their innovation to the solution was, how they developed their solution, and if they are planning, what are their steps to implement it. So I would encourage teams that are interested in getting involved with the Global Innovation Award is to attend a competition in January and February, which we will be offering all remote events, and we're still looking at the possibility of hybrid events. We'll be able to make that announcement by November. But regardless, get that feedback from the judges. Go in and talk. I know one thing that made Absolute Zero's project even stronger was taking the feedback that they got in Martinsville and then taking the feedback that they got in Harrisonburg and just building on that and building on that. The write-ups will be due March 15th. And then we'll be gathering a group of judges from the United States Patent and Trademark Office, from James Madison University, from different experts within the replay play field being active, and they'll be using the rubric to decide our nominations. And so again, we'll be able to put that out there. I'm still working on the Global Innovation page, and I'll have it finished up by tomorrow morning, but then you can take a deeper look at that. So at this point, I think I have knocked out all the questions that I got beforehand. Somebody prior to this did ask how they should be presenting during COVID-19, and I wanted to throw it out there that our next webinar will be on team community outreach. We'll be talking with a team from Northern Virginia who 2 years ago actually took their project all the way to the Virginia legislators, and they were issued a really cool kind of decree or kind of notice to acknowledge all of their work. And so they'll be talking a little bit about team community outreach and how you can make a difference. I'll also be talking about a lot of pointers for how you can do some outreach during COVID-19, because it's not the same as it has been in the past. On November 10th, we'll be talking with our head judge advisor, Scott Rakestraw, and looking at the tournament judging style. It will be, we have made the announcement that will be remote this year. So we'll be looking to that. And then one really important webinar that I really suggest all of our coaches, and we'll be talking it up more, but with things changing with COVID-19, on December 8th, we'll be doing a what to expect when preparing for an event. We'll try to have all the answers that we can, and we'll be talking with our team about how to get your teams ready for the January, February competition. And you can find these registration links on our website, actually on our homepage. If you just go to VA+DC it's one of the sliding banners, our webinar series. And so we'd be happy to have you guys there. One question that did come up for competitions, what's the age cutoffs where we switch from elementary to middle? And I'm going to connect with that coach later on because I do have a link that will answer all of their questions. So just know that I do see your question and I will get back to you with that. So we are right at 8 o'clock and I want everybody to go and enjoy the rest of their evening. I want to thank Absolute Zero, the coaches, and Absolute Zero, I'm already getting some great feedback from teams or from coaches. Great webinar, very helpful. But thank you so much, students and coaches, for the time you give, for being on the call tonight, and just representing Martinsville and Virginia and First LEGO League so extremely well, because that was definitely you guys. So thank you guys so much. And to conclude, I will wrap up and send the slides out tonight and a link to the recording. So if you have any coaches or you want to show this webinar to your team members, you'll be able to access that afterwards. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.